is time for us to bring you the Gillette Lab performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Gillette Lab's performance rankings for an effortless finish to your day. It's time for us to get into this, Owen. We do this every week. We have red for bad. We have amber for we're not quite sure whether or not your performance is good or bad. The jury is out. And then we have green for go.
Indeed we do, and it was, as you say, a pretty chaotic weekend, and there was a lot of green, a lot of red, and a bit of amber as well. We're going to start in the red as ever this morning, and as you can see, Chelsea and rugby rules are the things that are coming under fire from us here this morning. Chelsea first off. A nightmare weekend, I think it's fair to say, if you're a Chelsea supporter, and it doesn't even come down to the fact that they lost the cup final yesterday, where their goalkeeper gets substituted off and then the keeper that they bring on ends up skying the ball a million yards above the crossbar. Like, that is very much, I would think anyway, the second worst thing about the weekend from a Chelsea standpoint. I think that the way in which Chelsea have, I guess, conducted themselves in the face of what's going on in Ukraine at the moment was pretty disgraceful, and the way in which they're going to try and protect Roman Abramovich in the way they've already tried to protect him has left a lot to be desired, I think it's fair to say. So for anybody who hasn't seen this over the course of the weekend, there was a 110-word statement that came out from Abramovich at the start of the weekend, which didn't mention Russia or Ukraine. This was Saturday night. This was after today's Premier League. I think maybe midway through match of the day kind of comes out. Met with heavy criticism, as you can imagine, this statement. And in Chelsea kind of come out and they realise that they haven't actually condemned what's going on. They released another short statement 14 hours later on Sunday morning, saying the situation in Ukraine is horrific and devastating. Chelsea's thoughts are at everyone in Ukraine. Everyone at the club is praying for peace. The original statement had said that the stewardship, which is an interesting word, of Chelsea FC will be handed over to the trustees of the charitable trust, and these trustees had only learned of the plan to hand him stewardship of the club on Saturday. And this is the likes of Bruce Buck, Emma Hayes, Seb Coe is on this committee of people. And I guess this has been just a really shoddy attempt to try and divert the attention away from their owner, who is still the owner of Chelsea FC. Let's not forget. There has been some suggestion that there will be sanctions that would dissuade him from ever owning the club again, but that very much remains to be seen. Then yesterday with Chelsea, you have a situation where Thomas Tuchel decides that Edouard Mendy, despite being one of the better goalkeepers in the world, is not going to be his goalkeeper for the penalty shootouts. In fairness, Kepa is known for being decent in penalty shootouts, I guess, or being decent on the goalkeeping side of saving penalties. And he decides to bring him in. He says, target me, not Kepa, when it comes to your criticism of the game, and that's where he left that. But all in all, a really, really bad weekend for Chelsea and for their supporters.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to care too much about the Carabao Cup when all the rest of the stuff is going on, and definitely there's like a bit where you're sitting on the couch going, am I going to flick over to the real news, or am I just going to sit and watch this for my enjoyment and escapism? And I think that's going to be how a lot of us are watching our sport for the next while, because the imagery coming through, you don't have to dig too deep to get first-hand eyewitness accounts of what's happening in Ukraine from people on the ground, and it's grim. It's really, really grim, and it's kind of terrifying if you start to think about how this escalates or how it de-escalates. In the meantime, it looks like a very calculated and cynical move by Abramovich and Chelsea to pretend that he isn't actually the beneficial owner. So, we'll put the stewardship of the club into the hands of the trustees of the charitable trust. It means nothing. It actually just means nothing. Chelsea is still beneficially owned by the same person, who is Roman Abramovich. And let's not pretend that somebody who owns an organisation like that is not the single most important thing. You know, in American sports, when you win the Super Bowl, they give the trophy to the owner. That's really what they should do in...
They're straight up about it.
Exactly. In football, it's the same thing. Like, now, sometimes Abramovich and his relationship with the UK and his ability to get visas has been tricky, so there would have been somebody designated to be in loco parentis, and that would have been difficult, but it would have been revealing. It's like that fit and proper persons test that the Premier League have allegedly been carrying out on their owners over years and years and years, it's nonsense, right? It is nonsense. And when stuff like this happens, it does throw into sharp relief who owns football, really. Like, football is supposed to be a community representation. It's supposed to be the best of a certain area versus the best of other certain areas. And then that completely fell away over the last 25 years because there's so much money in the game. And when Abramovich pretends that he is somehow responding to the situation in Ukraine with this, while not actually coming out and criticising what happened, like, it's interesting, his daughter did come out and criticise what's happened, but he has yet to issue any statement on the illegal occupation and the invasion by Russia of Ukraine. And there's been no criticism of him from the Tories who run England. And, you know, the money train from Russia to the Conservative Party is really strong, and it's going to become very clear that it's very difficult for English political society, particularly the Tories, to separate themselves from the what was the phrase that was used, the sewers of Russian money that run under London. And Chelsea was one of those, one of the baubles on the tree that was the biggest and easiest to watch. And it's like, well, this guy owns Chelsea. Don't let him pretend he doesn't own Chelsea or isn't in charge of Chelsea. And if there are sanctions against Russian business owners and their assets, that has to include Chelsea. He could sell Chelsea, he could divest himself of that, and let's see what happens in that instance. So it's going to be pretty tricky for everybody at the club over the next while to pretend that what's going on by Russia invading Ukraine shouldn't have an impact. It should have an impact, and, you know, the football, I think, is going to become secondary in many aspects.
100%. And then there's also like the non-Chelsea aspect of this on football over the last couple of days, and FIFA essentially refusing to suspend Russia from international football has been a very interesting story. So for anybody who missed this, you've got Poland, Sweden, Czech Republic. They're the three teams who Russia may have to go via in order to qualify for Qatar this year. So they've all said that they're going to refuse to play Russia. These games are due to take place in March, and FIFA now wants the Football Union of Russia to be the team that these outfits are going to go up against. You know, no anthem, no fans, so therefore it's not Russia and a different name. I don't know how FIFA are going to try and sort this out, because you've had Poland, Sweden, Czech Republic doubling down on their statement that they're not going to play the Football Union of Russia. So FIFA either need to give Russia a free passage to the World Cup or review its decision to let them compete. Surely, we never know with FIFA. We never know with FIFA, but surely one of those two options is the more obvious path here.
You know, FIFA did give a World Cup to Vladimir Putin, and FIFA did say that football was fixing the world's ill. So was football wrong about that? It appears that actually they would have, in retrospect, it'll come to see that this emboldened Putin.
Yeah, like I mean, it does feel that there's like a bit of a line in the sand that's been drawn last week. It should have been drawn way before last week. There's absolutely no question about that. But it does feel it has been drawn here now, and FIFA are now realising what it's like to be stood up to. You've also got the women's team who are due to take part in the European Championships this summer as well. So you'd imagine they're going to meet the same fate that the men's team are. Like, what I think is going to be interesting, so you've got this Football Union of Russia idea pushed out there by FIFA. FIFA, what that says to me, think that the symbolic gesture will actually work here. And I wonder, is this, like, did FIFA maybe look at some of the other movements that have seen football and politics mix quite closely over the last little while? And it's not even political whatsoever, but more societal issues. And I wonder, did they look at something like the Black Lives Matter movement and think to themselves, right, football can get away with letting players take the knee, and our day-to-day operations of football is not going to be disrupted any bit by this. You know, we can feel good about ourselves because the players are making their gesture, and we don't need to feel overly uncomfortable by doing anything more. Whereas in this occasion, there are teams who are unwilling to play football matches, and I think that FIFA are now all of a sudden in a situation where they're like, we haven't encountered this before. This is a very, very different scenario, and I guess they are no longer the bully in the room. The tables have turned significantly on them, and how they're going to deal with this is going to be very interesting, because, as you said, they've had a very, very cosy relationship with the country over the last little while.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, global events can overtake sporting events really quickly, but it will be very interesting to see if other countries decide to follow the lead of those countries who are saying, no, we're not going to play. And it'd be great if they didn't then play in a behind closed doors or neutral venue or any of that kind of stuff. They just said, no, we're not playing. We're not partaking in this tournament if they're partaking in the tournament. Because if everybody says that, then FIFA end up having to do the right thing, which is kick them out. So we'll come back to that. That's Chelsea in the red. Some special mentions coming in for people already. Special mention for Sinead Kavanagh beating Leah McCourt on one leg on Friday night, grinding it out after getting injured early on. Great crowd at the 3 Arena again as well. Katie McCabe should be in green, scored a wonderful volley as Arsenal hammered Liverpool 4-0. It was an absolute thunder bastard, which is doing the rounds on Twitter if you haven't seen it. And then hard luck to Shane Lowry last night, so close, just a shot back. So, I mean, you would put him in the green for the good form, but is he feels in the red this morning, perhaps, having had the opportunity. So if anybody missed this, Berger was 6 shots clear heading into the final round, and it looked like, you know, it's going to be one of those Sunday processions, but then he completely fell apart, and an Austrian who I am unfamiliar with ended up winning it.
Yeah, Sepp Straka, the first Austrian to win on tour in I don't know how long, and he finished 1 stroke clear of Shane Lowry. Straka finished 4 under for his round. Lowry finished 3 under for his round, and there was just this deluge right at the end, which maybe in time Lowry will think, God, I came at just the wrong time. If it had been an hour later, he might have got himself into a tie-break here. Maybe not. Maybe Straka was just in an unstoppable place at that point. And Lowry's putt, for example, on the 18th was always going to come up short, but it definitely felt it didn't do him any favours. Even just having to stand there and wait under an umbrella and as play kind of slowed down probably didn't do him any favours at that point. Was full sure he was going to do it last night, but wasn't to be. But Berger, as you say, bit of a meltdown on the final day. Finished 4 over for his round yesterday, so he finished in 4th place. But still, like finishing second at the Honda Classic is not something that Shane Lowry would have sniffed at the start of the year, to be quite honest with you. So it was a good finish from him, and Straka just sensational yesterday. Lowry coming in 2nd place. Yeah,
watch Lowry over the next few weeks. So he's obviously, when he gets in form, he contends, and that's where his wins have tended to come from in the past as well. So the rugby rules were in red. You better be very careful here, Owen. The rugby bros are going to be coming for you if you complain about their laws. We've got rugby rules. We're wrong.
Yeah.
They're not rules. We're idiots. We've erred first already. From the get-go, we are revealing our ignorance because we are but paupers when it comes to understanding of the laws of the game. Oh, and their laws.
Alliteration is more important than laws, I think. You're not a fan of this, I sense, of what happened yesterday. We really did call it a disgrace at the top of the show, so, I mean, I'm not exactly sleuthing too hard here.
So, a man gets sent off for a thing that happens, and one incident leads to 2 red cards. Now, it's not a red card because he's not going to get suspended, whoever you take off. So already you're framing this wrong. No. 2 players get sent off for 1 incident. Like, every sport in the world has gone through a period where they get a bad rule, they introduce the rule, and they change the rules after that because they realise, oh, we're idiots. Well, there's double jeopardy there. We've completely ruined the sport by our idiocy and our arrogance and our stupidity. But in this one, just go and check all the blowhards defending the law because, well, this incident happened with Pat Lam and whoever else. It's like, oh, rugby is infested with cheats is what their argument is, and we need to fix it. It's like, well, or the rules just need to be the already complicated rules need to be a bit more nuanced. If the second incident is a red card, well, then we actually won't apply the double sanction of the two sendings off. It's just, as Shane Horgan said, if you need a matrix to explain the rules, maybe you need to revisit that.
Are you completely not buying the idea that the rule before, like that there was a loophole in the rule and that there would be room for cheating?
The fix of the loophole has created an idiotic situation, which isn't that hard to work out. So let's just run through when you're in the room. It's like, oh, let's just run through what happens there in this scenario. Yeah, so a hooker gets injured, the next hooker comes on and gets sent off, and one of the first plays afterwards, what happens then? Oh yeah, well, we sub on another front row and then we take off somebody else as well. It's like, okay, so it'll be 13 men. It's a double red card. Yeah, Exactly, it's a double red card. What? How does that make any sense?
And would you change it to maybe not a double yellow red card, or not a double red card, but maybe, I don't know, an extended sin bin? I think that's what Tony Ward is calling for, an orange card of sorts.
Aren't they trialling the orange card in the Super Rugby or some kind of equivalent to that? The red card, you can go back after 20 minutes. Like, I get the contested scrums and uncontested scrums. There's been various stages where you're thinking, oh, we could go to uncontested scrums here, and that would be good for us. But like, you shouldn't be allowed to voluntarily go for it. Like, I saw somebody else suggesting that, well, you could just have a third prop on the bench, break glass in case of emergency, but you can't do that because you'd actually also need extra tight heads. You kind of need a limitless supply of tight heads to be able to go to the uncontested scrums. But the double red card makes no sense. There's nowhere that I've ever seen anybody go, I'm going to send one player off, but two players are going to go off for that same incident. The number 8 had to go off. He got sent off effectively because of the high tackle. Like, there's no other way of reading that. As soon as it was a scrum, they had to sub off the number 8, take him off the field by rule, by law.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get 100%, but like, I'm also just trying to understand this from the other side of things, where where actual human beings did come up with this law.
They did.
And so I am trying to, like,
the best and brightest minds in world sport have come up with this plan. Do you feel that this is a well-run sport? Do you think that maybe this is in keeping with other aspects of the sport that we're seeing and how well it's run at the moment?
Well, like, I mean, is it
shit show of a calendar that they have, the mix and gathering of rules at different parts of the hemispheres of different rules, the rugby calendar, the tournaments that the hotspots that they come up with, the fact that, like, the Southern Hemisphere countries used to just be able to steal players from the islands. Like, oh, we'll give you a scholarship, come over at 12, you're ours now, we own you. Like, it's a nonsensically badly run sport at the administrative level. It's a brilliant sport to watch. It's a great sport to play when it's safe to do so. And notwithstanding that, we still manage to see great games, but it's run by idiots.
But is it just galaxy brain stuff when they get too far ahead of themselves, thinking about what people might do with the rule and what the loophole might be that they expose? Is that
giving them a lot of credit?
Rather than just pure idiocy, I'm just trying to think.
Their brains are too big.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, they certainly think their brains are too big.
The brains are like, and you can see a team trying to cheat whenever the rules allow it. And if you are getting beaten up at the scrum, you will do everything in your power to try and arrest that slide in some way. And there is a pretty obvious rule. If you've got nobody left in the front row to go uncontested,
say the referee,
and that's why the rule exists.
Say the referee had sent Kepa off for time-wasting and gamesmanship in the penalty shootout yesterday, which it's not beyond the bounds of possibility. He could have booked him straight away. He didn't. He let it go on the whole way, and it really annoyed the Liverpool players, and it had zero impact in the end. But say he'd booked him once and then booked him again, what would have happened? Somebody else would have been nominated to go in, right? Oh, you can't do that in rugby, it's too dangerous. Well, I mean, if the team is deciding that they're going to cheat to the point where, are we saying that there's no other solution other than the 2 red cards? Because I don't believe that.
Yeah, well, that's where
you're saying. What's your solution to this problem? And I'm like, well, like.
So, like, I mean, I guess we would need to ask somebody who's played there. But I mean, do you just move somebody else in the forward pack into the front row? Is that actually dangerous? I presume that there is a health and safety reason why that isn't, what actually wouldn't be allowed, and that's why we're in the situation.
Well, couldn't you have like a bad prop play? I mean, we've seen props play hooker, we've seen hookers play prop at various stages. We've seen them do it very well. Like, the throwing in didn't seem to be an issue. There's definitely a way around it if they want to do it, but you're going to have the blowhards saying, no, our laws are perfect. They're perfect laws.
It's also probably coloured by the fact that the game became just... It ended the game as a contest at that moment. I know it didn't necessarily until the second half, until Italy got properly worn down and until Ireland actually woke up a little bit. But I do think maybe if this was against a stronger opposition, would this be as big a talking point? Maybe it would, it probably would, but like it does feel that it's like...
Oh, it'd be a bigger talking point because it would be a better game that was ruined. Like, nothing happened yesterday. Ireland scored 50 points. We always score 50 points at home against them in recent years. Italy were game. They're always game. Their defensive structures looked okay. Their defensive structures always look okay. They had no attacking... Blah, 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 blah. Ireland, that game... European rugby has managed to make Italian rugby so badly funded and run, and they don't care about them to the point where these games, there's no jeopardy in them anymore anyway. So, but if it had actually been against better opposition, or if it happens to us, where we end up going down to 13 men and our game gets ruined against England, say, next week, say Sheehan gets injured and Herring gets sent off, or Sheehan gets sent off and then Herring gets injured and there's no one left to go, and we go to the uncontested scrums and we end up at that stage 13 men. It's the same. The law makes no sense. A double red card for one incident makes no sense. Like, if that's your starting point, the starting point is wrong. And from that, come up with another solution. Whatever those other solutions are, try those out, and try them out in a sevens tour. You can't try that in a sevens tournament. Try it out in like a pre-season match and go, well, okay, we want you to simulate this and simulate that and simulate this. What's going to happen here? Like, there are ways to do this without it happening in what's supposed to be the best competition in the world.
Like, I mean, I'm trying my best to find the devil's advocate response to that, but it is hard when you do see two people go out for what is essentially the one incident. But maybe moments like Bloodgate changed the entire perception of rule makers in the sport. Maybe there were just cheats everywhere.
I mean, there are cheats everywhere.
We need to the thing at the top of their mind is how do you combat cheats.
I thought rugby's values are respect. Rugby's values are cheating and gouging, and like that's why it's such a great sport to watch sometimes, is because it's hard to referee and the game gets refereed at the edges. Like, rugby talks a lot of nonsense about itself, and then it peacocks around, particularly the people who run the game, peacock around about their own brilliance and their own genius. They have a great welcome for themselves, as the saying goes, and stuff like that happens, and like, oh no, this is perfect. It makes perfect sense. Your idiot brain is too small to understand how this actually makes perfect sense. Okay, great.
I'm not sure I've seen anybody call it perfect. I haven't really been on social media, or I didn't actually see much of the post-match analysis yesterday, I'm not going to lie. So, were people calling it perfect?
There are rugby bros out there who are defending. It's successfully achieving what it's supposed to be achieving.
Okay. Well, I don't think anybody. I don't think it's perfect.
I love this variation of success. Right. The Gillette lads' performance rankings for an effortless finish to your day.
In the amber, we are putting Tottenham Hotspur, who, let's face it, they probably should be in the green after their performance on Saturday, because all 4 goals were brilliant. You have Heung-min Son and Harry Kane combine for a new record of 37 goal combinations in the Premier League. They move a further goal clear of Lampard and Drogba and Henry and Pires, and time will judge them very well as a pair in the Premier League. But I just can't get past, Antonio Conte and his comments last week, especially when he is as glowing as he is about his project at Tottenham in the aftermath of their win against Leeds on Saturday. Like, there has to be like a 5-step plan to get your way out of the sulk that he was in last week, right? Like, you can't just go from being like, I'm a terrible manager, maybe I'm crap at this, to everything is fine and everything's perfect in the space of like 4 or 5 days. But that's exactly what happened here. So for people who didn't see his post-match comments, like, he went from potentially not being good enough to being like, for the first time I've seen my mark about this system. To create with the wing back and the other wing back, which is Sessegnon and Matt Doherty, who scored. This is a mark of my system, my formation. This is the first time it means the work is starting to work. It was a good performance for us in a difficult stadium, etc., etc. But it seems that the switch has been flicked in between Burnley and Leeds, and that may be the truth, and maybe Spurs are going to go on and win the rest of their games this season, but it does feel that switches don't just flick like that in football, especially when results have been so mixed. And I'm not sure if I'm entirely buying these Conte comments, despite the fact that I'm a massive Conte fan and think he was the right appointment for Spurs at the time. I'm just not sure if this is the sort of out of the rut immediately, but his comments seem to be suggesting that.
I think it was, maybe I'm doing somebody else a disservice, but I think it was David Connolly on Friday morning on the football kickoff who actually was saying everybody needs to cool the jets in the Burnley performance. Burnley, like, if you look at their results against the top teams, they've drawn with almost all of them. Liverpool scraped a 1-0 win, and everybody else has really struggled against them. So don't over-analyse / overreact to Spurs' Burnley performance. Spurs could be going really well or really badly, and that performance and the result, that might have been fairly similar. The thing to do was to look back at how well they played against Manchester City and go, well, actually, there's a template there. I think he was right. I think he was proven right at the weekend. I think that it's possible that the switch didn't get flipped this week. The switch got flipped a couple of weeks ago.
Maybe.
He overreacted to the Burnley performance, knowing that it was another opportunity for him to stick it to the board, like seize popularity with the fans, and make sure that when the argument is being had in the summer, he's got that one circled and goes, afterwards we did great stuff, but that's still possible. We could still get beaten by a team who are battling relegation because I don't have X, Y and Z. It does look like the players they signed, the two players who weren't enough. They've settled into the team
Kulusevski in particular
pretty quickly. Wouldn't it be amazing if this was to be a late stage flowering of Matt Doherty as well? It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that he can turn Matt Doherty into, he's got some track record of good right wing backs appearing, everybody having written off and then going, you could be in the team of the year. So look, I really hope. Doherty's finish was sublime.
Yeah.
I didn't see any more of the game beyond the goals, so I don't know how well he played after that, but if he's getting name checked in the aftermath of it and things have turned around and the atmosphere is good, you'd expect him to get picked next week.
You would absolutely, especially if this is now the system working, and we said that at the start that this system may actually play into Matt Doherty's strengths, and it's been a few months at this point, and maybe we'd jumped to conclusions a little bit too quickly about whether or not it was going to work for Doherty. Maybe it just does take time, and maybe Conte is finally starting to see the system work. It's going to be, the next two fixtures are going to be very interesting when he goes up against Everton and goes up against Manchester United. The next two Premier League fixtures, I should say, because they've got Borough in the Cup this week. But that Manchester United game in particular is going to be a very curious staging post for this team, especially given the context of Manchester United reportedly having been interested in Conte in the past. And if you had to make your mind up maybe before Saturday on who was doing the better job so far, Ranić or Conte, or who was having the better time of it, it might have been hard to decide. Now Saturday probably tilts it back in Conte's favour a little bit, and as we said multiple times in the show before, the top four race is absolutely fascinating. There are 5 points between them at the moment, and Spurs have 2 games in hand, so they're going at around the same rate of knots at the moment in the Premier League in that race for the top 4. So it's going to be brilliant over the course of the next while, but whether or not I'm just throwing my lot in with Spurs right now and saying that it's all sunshine and rainbows, I'm not convinced. But the thing is, you're not going to back against Conte as opposed to some of the other managers around him in that table at the moment.
Well, certainly he's look, we'll see. It could be a false dawn. I don't know. I do feel like there's I'd be amazed if he was to walk away, given that Spurs could easily be a top 4 team with the stadium and with the money and with the whole notion that they don't spend money isn't actually correct over the last number of years. It's just that they've invested horribly. So, okay, let's move on.
2 fairy tales in the green this week. First is a boy from Cork who kicks the winning penalty as a goalkeeper in a cup final yesterday for Liverpool. Caoimhin Kelleher, of course, a brilliant day for him. And possibly an even greater fairy tale story is that a Leinster team has won a game against the Giants of Dublin. Which is the greatest fairy tale here?
Well, I just really wish that maybe we'd sent the team out in a more aggressive fashion in last year's championship to see when we put the white flag up in the first few minutes in Leinster last year. Maybe that was an opportunity missed in retrospect. Maybe Jack O'Connor wasn't ambitious enough for this Kildare crew. Just felt we needed to get that point raised today as a reminder of where we've come from. I think Kildare are probably a little bit ahead of schedule at the moment. Maybe that's to do with the Dubs not being particularly good at the moment.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Is it to do with the Dubs not being particularly good, or is it to do with the fact that Kildare are actually in a really good place? Which is a more important factor in that win yesterday?
I think every match has its context. I don't think the Dubs are great at the moment. I think they're working through a lot. They're definitely trying out a bunch of new players and new combinations and a new style of play. And Desi Farrell's talking about that in the papers today. But equally, it's clear that Kildare have a sense of identity, and they too are trying out players, and they too are trying to be a bit different. For the first time in a long time, they've got a bit of strength and depth, and they've got an inside forward line that's dangerous, and that is going to cause almost any team problems. They've got a reliable free taker, and they've got a style of play and the patterns of play, and they've got conditioning which allowed them to stand up to Dublin yesterday in a way that we haven't really seen for a long time. They were certainly winning the collisions, but again, it's not the championship, it's February, and while it's a good sign. It's not the end of the road.
Like, I mean, yeah, 100%. But there's also a bit of like celebration policing going on around Kildare yesterday, which is just. I just find it completely off the mark. I find that the context of this one yesterday is actually significant because, I mean, there is somebody on this show who likes to say, don't give a sucker an even break, and there is a truth to that. Like, I mean, can you even call the rest of the people in Leinster suckers over the last little while? I think that might be giving them too much credit. I think the way Dublin have utterly dominated them and demoralised them, and it must have been hell to be a county in Leinster trying to exist as a football.
It was pointless.
Pointless. That's worse. That's worse than everything.
It was pointless.
So it is the league. It is just February. We are almost in March, and it is possibly going to be a situation where Dublin do get further than every other Leinster team in the All-Ireland Championship this year. But it's just that little inkling of hope that has been so absent for so long in Leinster that makes yesterday significant. And I don't know, if I'm a Leinster or if I'm a Kildare fan this morning, I'm pretty happy with how yesterday turned out. And the same goes if you're a Liverpool fan. Obviously, we're going to have Mark Lawrenson with us, who will get stuck in properly into this final. But like, it's been spoken about a little bit in the aftermath of the game. But how much credit does Caoimhin Kelleher deserve for conceding as many penalties as he does before banging one into the back of the net? Because I know it's not necessarily weighted in the goalkeeper's favour anymore when it comes to these penalty shootouts to actually save them, because penalty taking was so good yesterday. But it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Europa League final last year, where obviously David De Gea in goal, and Unai Emery's Villarreal obviously win that on the day. But it was kind of a sense that once you get down to the goalkeepers, you do get kind of battered down by all the goals you've conceded once you get to player 11. Maybe. And that's your confidence gets a bit of a tanking. But with Caoimhin Kelleher yesterday, that was absolutely not the case.
No. He was inspired by the Cork hurlers and their absolute domination of Limerick, who didn't even make your list. Put your Gilroy in red for doubting the Cork hurlers, says Mernon on Instagram. I mean, I did doubt the Cork hurlers. It was like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But let's wait. Easter Sunday is the day that we're asking the Limerick hurlers to rise from the dead. I didn't realise that, but that's when their championship clash is going to be, which is like not that far away at all. So it's obviously Pancake Tuesday on Tuesday, which means it's 40 days after that, if my ecumenical maths are any good. So we're 42 days away from it. I don't know, maybe that's that. Am I right? Is that still the same?
I didn't know. So it's Pancake Tuesday tomorrow, is it?
Yeah.
Nice one.
Conor O'Donnell in green. Good for Donegal to bounce back after the horror show on Kerry, says Richard. Jonathan Moffat says Shane Lowry should be in green. Pierce O'Connor says Desi Farrell, Chelsea on and off the pitch. We agreed with you on that one. Ranick, rugby rules should always be in the red. I don't know about Ranick. It's not his fault that absolute sitters are being missed by the team. Maybe it is. Maybe it is his fault. I don't know enough about really the bad luck evening itself out over the course of the season versus good quality coaching, but it seems like they have plans in place. We'll come back to that. Dublin football red, Dublin hurling green. The Dublin hurlers not getting enough love. Like we were last week on the performance ranking, so it was a big test for them. But yeah, absolutely. You go and you back up exactly what we asked you to do. And then the Wexford hurlers, so suddenly we have to reevaluate Galway because Limerick in the league against Cork, really not very good, and they did have Keane Lynch back. So does that take Galway back a bit? But then Wexford keep winning and winning and winning. So Caoimhin Kelleher immense today. Pressure on Bazunu, asks Hey. Brian Rossler says Limerick and Orange not the same team without the water breaks. I've been there. This is a great narrative. It is absolutely brilliant, and we will definitely delve into it a lot. Kelleher and Green, says Dave, as well. We've already given our special shout outs a little bit earlier on in the show as well. Every week on the Gillette Lab Performance Rankings, we're looking for your suggestions. Who should make the green, the orange and the red from the weekend? Get in touch on the stories on the Off the Wall Instagram on Sunday afternoons, or comment live on Monday's OTB AM, and we'll pick out a winner for our Gillette Labs Razor Pack. That is it for the Gillette Lab Performance Rankings this week.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.